How you doing, guys? When my nephew started running around a lot, I used to think it was funny. I would hide around the corner. Now, mind you, he knew I was there. But he'd come around the corner and I'd jump out and scare him, and he'd stop laughing and run away just to come back and do it again. Of course, this many years later, he's now in his 20s. I don't think it would have the same effect. I went to a parochial school, and it was pretty evident. Now, this was the old-style Notre Dame nuns, and when I first saw them, they were a scary sight. They scared the bejesus out of me. And two things that they used to use to gain control was guilt and fear. They started with the fear first, and they used to beat the hell out of me when I was younger. That lost its effect when I realized that my father, who was a 250-pound steel worker, hit a whole lot harder than they did. So after a while, that had no effect. But they did try the guilt. I used to get in trouble a lot when I was younger. So what this one nun did one time, she took me out into the courtyard in front of the statue of the Virgin Mary. And she says, "Look up." Okay? You made her cry. See? And she made me look at it again. And I'm like, okay, now, in my head, I'm thinking, it's a statue. I don't see any tears, but she tried to convince me that I made this statue cry. Didn't work, although I pretended it did. And it was pretty evident over the years that these were the two elements that the religions of the world use to gain control over people's lives, is guilt and fear. What scares you when you're younger isn't going to scare you when you're older. Now, I was never a churchgoer. I never saw the need of it. And I never started attending any services on a regular basis till I started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses. My Bible instructor epitomized Watchtower, and this was the first red flag that I absolutely ignored, and I should have paid attention, because he tried to gain control over my life right from the get-go. The problem with scare tactics: to use scare tactics effectively, you should know your target, which he actually knew very little about me, but he went basically on a lot of assumptions. And I realized that this guy was a control freak, not only in the organization, but he tried it on the outside world as well. And I'm like, this ain't happening. I mean, he would show up uninvited everywhere. And I finally told him one day, and it wasn't too long into it was only a few months, and I told him, "Dude, you're a control freak and it's going to stop." He says to me, "Be more specific." And I'm like, how specific do I have to be? Stop trying to control my life. As time went on, I found out that this is the way the organization was working, that they would gain control using guilt and using fear. And for the most part, for most JWs, it was working. But every time I heard about dying at Armageddon, it reminded me a lot of what I heard when I was in that parochial school, was burning in hellfire, and after a while it just had no effect. Now, my Bible instructor, he had to gain control over other people. And why? Because Watchtower had done this to him. They emasculated him. They made him feel about this big. So he tried it with me. Now, I gained some distance from him for quite a few years, although periodically he would still try and eke into my personal business. And it was obvious as time went on, and I mentioned in my last video that no one has mastered the Bible. Not Jehovah's Witnesses, not the Catholic Church, not the Baptists, not your non-denominational churches. No one has mastered it. However, the people that use it the most effective have ill intent. Now, it's obvious that Watchtower has very ill intent, much like most every other religion. And Jehovah's Witnesses think it's for their own good. But no, it is not. You've given up your life. You're living in constant fear of Armageddon. The guilt trips are unbelievable. I mean, look at the suicide rate amongst Jehovah's Witnesses and in any high control group. Is that right? No, it is not. It was obvious towards the end that I wanted to leave the organization. And they tried like hell to get me to go back. And the thing is, If I wanted to leave that badly, why would they go to such extremes to try and get me to go back? First of all, if I don't want to be there, I don't want to be there, but this is the control they have. Now look at the DF ones that come back. Look at the hoops they have to jump through to get reinstated. And that, to me, is a guilt trip right there. I mean, when you basically put a dunce cap on somebody, everybody knows they're DF'd, everybody shuns you. Why would anybody put themselves through that? Because they still believe it's the truth. The truth wouldn't have to hide. The truth wouldn't have to lie. The truth wouldn't be a money-making corporation under the guise of religion, and all religions are. They all make money. They're into it for the money. They're not into it for your benefit. I was talked into having one final Bible study to try and reel me back in. Now, this had a lot less effect than the first one. Now I knew the tactics. And it was obvious I wasn't going back. Now, the only reason I agreed to it was to stop feeling people out. I wanted to know what they knew. Come to find out, they knew exactly what I knew. They knew about the pedophilia, and it seemed to me that they were trying to water it down. When my former Bible instructor came to my door, because the elders could get nowhere with me, it was obvious that I was leaving. It seemed like these judicial hearings were getting to be semi-annual. And it's like, disfellowship me already. Although I did try to walk away, but no, they kept coming after me. My Bible instructor started harassing me at home, thinking that the scare tactics were going to work. I said to him, how confidential is our conversation? They said, oh, it's confidential. Right there, I knew he was lying, because I knew he was repeating everything I said. And every time he'd come by, I would throw something different at him. And it's like, dude, you're not going to get me to go back to the meetings. Well, he tried one scare tactic. And he'd come over, and I started making disparaging remarks about the governing body. And he says, now mind you, he even got the Bible character wrong when he said, well, you know, when the Apostle Paul was made fun of by those kids for being bald, those two bears came out of nowhere and ate them. Okay, no, I do believe that was Elijah. He's like, oh, it was the Apostle Paul. Like, no, it was Elijah. He says to me, well, it really doesn't matter. And I'm like, well, I'm sure it does to Elijah. Anyways, I started looking around. I says, well, I don't see any bears, so I think I'm okay. Well, I didn't say it had to be a bear. Well, maybe it's a lion or a tiger.
Lions and tigers and bears. Oh, my.
I pretty much thought the whole thing was kind of childish. But then again, so aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, Watchtower goes on the premise that we're all imperfect people. Matter of fact, the Bible in general does. If the creator of the universe is going to condemn you knowing you are imperfect for a short lifespan, for a few mistakes throughout your life, this is the same God that protects pedophiles, then the hell with that God. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses look at leaving the organization as the biggest sin you could possibly make. And using the name Jehovah in itself is a big-ass mistake. And I'm not going to go into that much right now. But JWs, wake up. With all the evils in this world, there is enough to be afraid of. Why let a religious, so-called religious organization rule over you? They use guilt and fear, and you're well aware of that. Why let them control your life? These guys are no better than you are. As a matter of fact, the fact that they know about the pedophile problem in the organization makes them far worse than you could ever think of being. And no, leaving an organization because you don't want to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses is hardly up there on the list of sins. With all the child trafficking that goes on this planet, with all the money laundering that's going on in your religious organization and others, no, leaving a religious organization to me is hardly a sin. But be careful of anybody who pushes the Bible. Like I said, I'm emphatic about that the people that use the Bible most effectively have very ill intent. Anyways, guys, I'd love to hear your comments, and I will talk to you soon. You have a good day.